Hello and welcome to my video on a group project game. First, I'll cover what I did in the game. The first thing the sound design team did was work on the music, and I was in charge of making the Glacier song and the ship song, which I used a website called Soundtrap to make the songs out of already existing audio clips on the website. This is a clip of the Glacier song. And this is a clip of the ship song. I then put them into Unreal and made a simple blueprint that can be dragged and dropped into the scene to play music. Next is the sounds for the characters in the game. I made footstep sounds for the characters that walk in the game, and made different sounds for the different materials that they could step on, like snow, metal, rock, and sand. I did this in Audacity by recording the sound and messing with them in pitch and distortions, and other ways of editing the sound. I then followed a tutorial on how to play the sounds, depending on what was stepped on, and made a blueprint that does so, that can be put into the animations to play the sound at the right time. I also changed the blueprint from the tutorial to play sounds at different volumes depending on the animations. The blueprint worked on physical materials that had to be put onto an object to know what sound to play. Otherwise, it would just play the stone one. I also made other sounds that could be used, like UI sounds of selecting and deselecting, and also grenade sounds. No sound or music I made it into the final version of the game, so you can find them in a blank Unreal project also handed in with this video. Next is the team planning and organisation. Several things were used to plan and organise the project. One of them was Trello. Trello was used to plan what was going to be put into the game. The planning was split into 5 different game areas, where the teams came up with what they needed to make for the game from the original concept. The game was split into programming, design, timeline, modelling, and sound. I can comment on what the sound team managed to get done, as I am part of it. We managed to get all the important stuff done, like walking sound music, which I made 2 of, and the other guy made 3 of. The abilities, which are the grenade sound, and the other guy made fire sounds. Punch sounds were made by the other guy. We also started doing some sound in the kind of important category, with me making the walking sounds for different environments. We also made an Excel spreadsheet to keep track of what was done and what was needed to be done. As you can see, as this was made later on, there are some differences in what was prioritised and what was not prioritised. And we realised that not all of the prioritised one needed to be fully done. Like the sound for abilities, as not many of them were anywhere near completion. However, as said before, we did 2 abilities, sounds. However, in the end, none of them were used anyway. We also had a bigger Excel doc for the entire class. However, to make it easier, this was split into smaller docs to make it easier to keep track of what was needed to be done. GitHub was used to cooperate with our work, and a PowerPoint was made by James and Matt to make people understand how the GitHub would be set up and how to use it. The way it would be set up is each programmer would have their own branch, and the art team would share a branch. So I and the sound team uploaded to the art branch. Then every now and again, the GitHub would be merged into the main. There are a couple of other PowerPoints that were created. One of them is a PowerPoint about programming techniques, which covered what needed to be programmed and who was programming what, and the standard of implementation. Another is a presentation on the game character and how it would work. I didn't really use or need to use any of these PowerPoints, however, as I was part of the art team. There was also a Word doc that covered the programming standards and how things are organised, which I did use as I had to know what went where, and as you can see, I followed what the sound was supposed to be organised as, with there being a sound folder, and in the sound folder it was separated into just different smaller categories, like ambient, movement, and character. But I added on to this, and in those folders, separate into further folders and categories, like weapons and footsteps. When we were not in class, we primarily communicated via Discord, through the group server, personal messages, and other servers that were set up to communicate in smaller groups. I primarily used the general chat to post updates on what I was doing and what I was planning on doing. Meanwhile, I used the personal sound team server, which had only 2 people, so it didn't need to be a server, but it was, to communicate with the other sound guy and organise what each of us were doing. I also used personal messages to ask questions to specific people, like when I had a problem with GitHub. I went to one of the people who organised the GitHub, and he was very helpful. We obviously also communicated in person as well. I would often talk to the other sound guy and the other art people and get their opinions on the things I made. We also had people who were team leaders go around and check that we were doing work and make sure we were doing the correct work and were up to date. We had in-person meetings that were used as a way to make sure everyone was on the right track. These were usually only the team leaders. However, every now and again, we would have a department meeting or a class meeting, like on the last week, where a bunch of things that were deleted as they were too big and not being used. So the meeting was about what could be deleted and what couldn't. There wasn't much testing that I was a part of, but I did my own testing on my own stuff, and I made sure that all of it worked. However, the change I did to the walking sound blueprint was never tested, as the character that walks wasn't finished.